going to start with this scientific critic, a fellow who made a video, 45-minute video, on about 7 of my videos. He criticized my notion of the scientific method. And I'm answering one point at a time. He just mentioned too many issues. Okay, he brought up a lot of issues. And so I'm going to address one issue at a time. Today I'm going to address the issue that he raised. It's related to evidence. So let me get that video rolling. You're going to hear him with his own words. You know, he's going to tell you what his problem is with evidence. So here goes, okay? Give me a second here and let me turn it on. Okay, here goes.
The questions and issues addressed in this rebuttal include, what is evidence? And does evidence play any role in science?
For example, he says that science is about rational explanations. And yeah, you'll have to have a hypothesis, but that hypothesis doesn't mean anything if it doesn't align with the evidence. What Bill doesn't seem to get is that evidence is the important thing in science, not the hypothesis.
Let me run that one more time. I got a little behind on that, so one more time here for everybody who missed it.
The questions and issues addressed in this rebuttal include, what is evidence? And does evidence play any role in science?
For example, he says that science is about rational explanations. And yeah, you'll have to have a hypothesis, but that hypothesis doesn't mean anything if it doesn't align with the evidence. What Bill doesn't seem to get is that evidence is the important thing in science, not the hypothesis.
Okay, so the issue is evidence, okay? He says that evidence plays an important role in science. But even before that, we have the issue of the word hypothesis. What the hell is a hypothesis? He thinks it's an explanation. He thinks a hypothesis is a tentative theory, okay? Tentative explanation. So here's the rundown on how we address that. The first thing is that in the religion of mathematics, right, hypothesis is an explanation. In science, a hypothesis is an assumption. Assumption includes the objects you're going to use. You have to make an assumption about the invisible objects that Mother Nature, Father Universe, the devil, God, whoever you believe in, what they use to do their physical things every day, you know, their ordinary workings. You want to explain gravity, you got to figure out what invisible entities Mother Nature uses to do this phenomenon. And so one of the things is that a hypothesis includes the objects. The other one includes the definitions. You need to have a series of definitions so that people can understand what you're talking about, okay? And then the other one is what we call the statement of the facts, not the facts. Facts is what Mother Nature knows. She's got a file cabinet out there with all the things that happened. We have no access to that file cabinet. All we can do is make a statement of what we think is in that cabinet. Statement of the facts, we call it. Those form the hypothesis. Those are 3 main points of a hypothesis. Okay, so we have a problem there already. We have a difference with what this fellow learned at Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford, maybe St. Andrews University. All these are just monasteries. They just teach the same thing that they learned from the previous generation. Okay, that's the first issue. Then we have an issue of, here you have it. For example, someone presents evidence. And they're going to present evidence, and what does the prosecutor do? He presents a feather. And you say, what does he present a feather? Well, he's going to prove to the jury, okay? This is the prosecutor. He's talking to the jury. He's going to present a feather, and he says that feather belongs to an angel because he's going to say, his argument is that the angel caused gravity, okay? And he presents evidence, a feather, okay? And here it is, okay? Here's a illustration of that. Here's you have the prosecutor presenting a feather to the jury because he says that gravity or magnetism or whatever is done with angels. Okay, now is that good evidence? Are we going to accept that as part of the theory of how gravity works? And here you have the modern version. You'd say, well, you don't believe in angels. Fine, okay, do you believe in space-time? Okay, here we have warp space-time. What is he going to present? Warp time? Are we talking about here, you know, you have Gravity Probe B, according to NASA's project, 1970s, they say that they sent a probe out there that had a gyroscope. This gyroscope, supposedly, and here you gotta, sit down to really understand what they're talking about. They say that what the gyroscope did was drag space-time around itself. Okay, they say it was known as frame dragging. Okay, so here's a little gyroscope, and it's going to drag space-time around itself. Is that evidence? Is that the evidence you're looking for to understand how gravity works? Okay, so we have a problem because here these people are presenting evidence, maybe evidence of a feather or maybe warp time, and with that they're going to say that's the evidence that explains how gravity works out there. What sense does that make? And then we have another issue with evidence, and that's that evidence has to do with belief. I present evidence. What is the purpose of that evidence? It's the purpose of it is to induce you to change your way of thinking. I'm trying to recruit you to my way of thinking. That's what I'm doing with evidence. That's what a prosecutor does. That's what a priest does. He presents evidence, maybe the Bible or whatever, and he says, I want you to believe like I do. That's what evidence is all about. I mean, here you have the jury, and they convict a guy, and they send him to the gallows, and it turns out 10 years later, because of DNA or whatever new evidence, it turns out he was innocent, or they determined that he was not guilty. So what does that mean about the first evidence? Was that evidence proof that the guy was, guilty, and now there's new evidence that shows that he's not guilty? And again, you can see that we have a problem with evidence. And then there's the final issue there that, what evidence are you going to present for an invisible, intangible entity? An object is not that which you can see or touch. An object is that which has shape. You cannot necessarily see and touch every object in the universe. You certainly cannot see the air. You cannot touch the table the Klingon has on the other side of the universe. So clearly see, touch are irrational criteria to define the word object. An object is that which has shape, and that does not entail that you can see and touch it. Okay, so now you have an invisible, intangible entity. Okay, that Mother Nature, Father Universe, whoever has out there. What evidence can you present? Please tell me, give me a clue what evidence I can present for an invisible, intangible entity that will prove to you, that will convince you that, yeah, that's exactly how Mother Nature does gravity. So this is the issue. Evidence is a problem. Okay, it's a problem because, first of all, it's got to do with belief. Second, you cannot use evidence to elucidate the nature of an invisible, intangible entity. And then, it's one of those things that even if I present evidence, like, in the case of the Gravity Probe B project, what am I going to do? Present warp time? What kind of evidence is that? Am I going to present a feather to prove to you that an angel does gravity? So this is where the problem is. So no, this fellow is mistaken. We do not present evidence in science. What we do in science, we present a theory, an explanation of how we think gravity works. And the purpose is not for you to believe. The purpose is for you to understand it. And then you reach your own conclusions in your own dark basement. That's the way science works.